In this video I'm going to show you some of the uses for the not and empty pseudo classes, which are new to CSS3. The not pseudo class targets elements based on a negative property, and the empty pseudo class targets elements that are completely empty. Both pseudo classes are fully supported by all recent versions of browsers, including Internet Explorer 9. I must admit that I initially had difficulty trying to think of useful ways of using the not pseudo class, but in the end I discovered it can be very useful, particularly when used in combination with other CSS3 pseudo classes. In this file I've got a set of links, and I'd like to put a vertical line between each one of them. Now, a very simple way of doing that is to add a right border to each one, but I don't want the one at the end to have a right border. So that's a good opportunity to use the not pseudo class. So let's go to the style sheet and make some changes here. What I want is UL, LI, then a colon not, and open parentheses. The condition for the not pseudo class goes between parentheses. What I'm going to use is the last child pseudo class. Close parentheses. So what this means is that it's going to affect all list items, but not the last child within the unordered list. Border right, and make it 2 pixels, black, solid. Click into Design View. You can see that Design View has not rendered my rule. That's because it's using the not pseudo class and the last child pseudo class. But if I go into Live View, you can see that I've now got a vertical line between each one, which is in fact a right border on each of the links, but not on the last one, because the rule said not the last child. Now this next example is more for debugging purposes rather than for displaying on a normal website. Very often when you're putting together web pages, you forget to include the alt attribute for images. So this little technique will enable you to find images that have got the alt attribute missing very quickly. So img, then the not pseudo class. And we're going to look for images that don't have the alt attribute. So I just put square brackets, ALT square brackets, then close the parentheses, and then add a border, make it a big fat border, 5 pixels, and we'll have a red one so it's really obvious. And if I now refresh Live View, you'll see that this image here has got a red border, whereas this one hasn't. And if we just check in the source code, you can see that this image has source, it's got width and height, but no alt attribute. This one has got the alt attribute. So it's a nice little technique for finding which images don't have the attribute before your website goes live. Let's take a quick look now at the empty pseudo class. Before I describe the empty pseudo class, just take a look at the style rules in this page here. I've used the not pseudo class on several occasions, and if we look in Live View, you can see that I've applied a bottom border to all table cells in every row except the last one, not the last child, and a right border to all table cells that are not the last child. So in other words, not these last cells in each row. The reason for doing so is because the table has a border of its own, which is a different color. And if you don't have those rules, the negative rules, you find the table rules being overwritten by the rules on the bottom border of the table rows and on the right border of the table cells. The other use of the not pseudo class is here. I've aligned the text to the left in the table header tags in every row except the first one, table row not first child. So the TH tags in the first row are all centered, which is the default for th tags, but in these 3 rows the text is aligned to the left. So now let's get on to the empty pseudo class, and we'll take a quick look at the HTML markup. And you'll notice that I've got some table cells here which are completely empty, and that's what the empty pseudo class targets. They must be completely empty. Even if you've got something like a non-breaking space in there, that does not count as being empty. So I'll put one in there just to show the difference when I apply the empty pseudo class. So TD for table cell, empty, and then we'll give them a different background color. There you are. The empty table cells have now been colored a different color. This is the one that I inserted the non-breaking space into, so it's no longer empty and it's not affected by the pseudo class. If I go back to the source code and remove that non-breaking space, you'll see that it's now affected by the empty pseudo class. So there you have it, the not and the empty pseudo classes.